Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, where the battle is to love yourself and function in society, where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares. Mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and that babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish, what tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution, it's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky, like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution, it's real solutions, where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy. And so we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed. Oh, my head spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish, what tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. It's real revolution, producing real solutions, because we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Real revolution, where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy. Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle, because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity, like living in this fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading. Look, they don't even need a reason, it's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. Said it got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 2020. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on song.
What's happening, good people? We are live and direct. This is RSTV, Black Power Media. What's happening? How y'all feel out there? Hope you're feeling good. I'm feeling good. I feel great. I feel like a revolution. Anyway, welcome to Black Power Media. If it's your first time coming on board, I say subscribe. You know what I mean? Hit that subscribe button at the bottom so that you can stay in tune and stay in touch with what's going on in all things movement. You know, definitely appreciate you all stopping through. Shout out to all the folks in the chat. Look like you're ready. Seems like you're ready. No, I can't really sing, but you know, I'm playing it off like I could. But anyway, welcome. We're about 900 from 50,000 subscribers on this platform. So if you haven't subscribed, you need to do what you need to do and stop playing. I'm in a strange space right now. I am excited. I am drained. I'm stressed and inspired at the same time. So imagine what that must feel like. And the guests that I have on tonight, I think they can relate, hanging a little bit harder than I have, particularly around this particular situation we're talking about today. For those of you who have been following, about a month and a half ago, I told you all that I had the opportunity to go check out a good brother, Mumia Abu Jamal. Again, emotional. It was the day before his 70th birthday. This time, I'm pleased to come back at you again on our political prisoner tour. Let me just say that because we have to check in with the freedom fighters. We have to make sure that those who are actually, you know, not in general population like us, but behind enemy lines a little bit point. Had the opportunity this past weekend. First of all, for my folks, FTP movement, we just commemorated our 20-year anniversary this past Sunday, June 9th. So definitely shout out to all the brothers and sisters that have been and supporters that have been rocking with us for the last 20 years. FTP movement churned. We do have a number of things that will be coming up. But for me, it was a bittersweet commemoration. I'm not going to say celebration because can't really celebrate when our people aren't free. But I had the opportunity to join some really, really dope attorneys and freedom fighters who represent our main man, Leonard Peltier. Had the opportunity to visit him and check him out face to face and feel his energy, you know, and that is in and of itself, you know, a beautiful thing. But the thing that wasn't beautiful is the fact that we had to leave him. But anyway, today, I know folks have been waiting, patiently waiting. Yesterday was his parole hearing, his first parole hearing in 15 years. Leonard has been locked up close to 50 years. He's been locked up longer, over half his life at this point, the majority of his life. He's been locked up. He's going on 80 years old in September. I believe it's September 12th. I could be wrong, but I'm sure the attorneys will straighten me out if I'm out of pocket. But so I invited these powerful attorneys to join us on Black Power Media today, and they decided to give their statement, their first public release to Black Power Media, and we think that that's dope because it means that they didn't go to the colonial press like most of us. We have to go run. We have to go, yell it to MSNBC and to CNN and to everyone else who really don't give. I mean, we curse on here for the record. Who really don't give a fuck about us. You know what I mean? So we got to go to them to be sanctioned and say, listen, this is what happened, so on and so forth. They decided to do what true freedom fighters do, and they came on here today. So without further ado, without me running my mouth all day, I know they're ready to start rapping. I want to invite lead attorney Jenipher Jones and her co-counsel attorney Moira Meltzer-Cohen. What's happening? How y'all feeling?
Oh, all right. We're recovering, reflective, and grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us on.
Stressed and inspired about
Yes.
covers it.
So, I had the opportunity of seeing you all yesterday afterwards, and you look like you were, in a brawl. You know what I mean? So today y'all look like, you hit the lotto, so it's all good. So it's a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely appreciate you all coming on, because you could have said, man, we ain't coming on no Black Power Media. Don't nobody know y'all. But but y'all slid through. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful to have witnessed you all work over this past several days. So for folks who are unfamiliar, I mean, I know there's a lot of people in the chat yelling free Leonard. We have some good people we all know. We see Dan and Dawn and Jericho and Paulette and more Jericho and a whole lot of other folks. You know what I mean? So we're glad that they are here. For folks who are just tuning in and never heard the name Leonard Peltier, if they've been under a rock or just haven't been political, they've been apolitical, whatever the case is, if you all don't mind, tell us who Leonard Peltier is and, how did this case come about?
Absolutely.
So Leonard Peltier is an enrolled member of Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. He was, as you said, he's almost 80 years old, and he is the longest serving Indigenous political prisoner in this country. He was born in the height of what's called the termination era, which is a time in history when the United States federal government was attempting to terminate the federal recognition of the sovereignty of Indigenous tribal nations, which, to the extent that it happened, was disastrous. And what resulted from it, even though it did end up thankfully not being entirely carried out, there was just unchecked poverty, family separation, language loss, culture loss. The spiritual and traditional practices of Indigenous peoples were criminalized, right? We have a First Amendment to the Constitution that guarantees the free exercise of religion, but up until the late 70s, it was criminally illegal for Indigenous peoples to practice their ceremonial spirituality or their spiritual ceremonies. So in this moment is when Mr. Peltier was born and when he was a child. A lot of people are starting to learn more now about the Indian boarding schools. Mr. Peltier is a survivor of the notoriously brutal Wahpeton boarding school. And he was someone who, as a young person, protested termination policies, fought for treaty rights, which are the supreme law of the land, fought for the rights of Indigenous people, and joined the American Indian movement. So, as probably anyone who watches your show knows, Kalonji, it is not particularly controversial to observe that in the 1970s, civil rights groups like AIM, the American Indian Movement, which engaged in community service and constitutionally protected activity, were subject to unlawful physical and electronic surveillance, propaganda and smear campaigns, infiltration and strategic internal disruption, and politically motivated prosecution. It is also well documented that during this time, and this is documented not just by activist historians, it is documented by Congress and the United States Civil Rights Commission, that during the 1970s, the tribal government of Pine Ridge, which is reservation land, Indian country in North Dakota and South Dakota, the tribal government at that time was installed by the United States federal government and was basically engaged in all-out warfare against its own traditionalist citizens, that is, against people who were not sufficiently assimilationist, okay? People who resisted colonial logic, colonial culture. And so there's all these, and again, I want to say this is not something that's just folklore. This is documented in, thousands of documents disclosed pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act. The FBI's own documents show that they were materially supporting extreme violence against traditionalist citizens of Pine Ridge, including by arming the guys who worked for the tribal president, Dick Wilson, who were known as the Goon Squad. So the tribal president basically had his own private mercenary police force, army, who was being armed by the FBI. And they were engaged in organized and lethal violence, including murders, assassinations, sexual assaults, and firebombing. The FBI was not only supplying the goon squads with weapons and ammunition, but turning a blind eye to the resultant devastation. And so this era on Pine Ridge, which is in both in the lead up and the wake of the occupation of Wounded Knee, is known as the Reign of Terror. Okay, and so during the Reign of Terror, there was this huge buildup of FBI agents who were just hanging out on Pine Ridge, surveilling and interfering with and intruding into the lives of traditionalist citizens. And really there was I can't emphasize enough how absolutely terrifying this was for everybody. People were afraid to go out. People were getting assassinated, shot by snipers. It was just not safe. And so people on Pine Ridge asked members of the American Indian Movement to come to protect them from their own tribal government and from these agents of the federal government. And on the morning of June 26, 1975, a couple of FBI agents appeared on the reservation to execute what is clearly a pretextual warrant, right? They came to arrest some people on this really trumped up charge. We don't, of course, know exactly what was going on, but it's very evident, looking at all the FOIA documents and looking at history, that whatever was going on, the warrant that they came to execute was not as serious as it has been made out to be. And the record is very, very unclear, but what is known is that there was an exchange of gunfire, and the two agents did end up getting killed. And in the wake of that, Mr. Peltier and two other people were targeted. Well, three other people. One of them had the charges dismissed. But essentially, Mr. Peltier and two other people were targeted for prosecution. Mr. Peltier fled to Canada because, of course, he knew that he was not going to get a fair trial here in the United States. He fled to Canada. They sought his extradition, and the investigation, the extradition, and his prosecution were all plagued by incredible, shocking, and well-documented government misconduct. His co-defendants were tried separately in a separate trial, and they were acquitted on grounds of self-defense. And after Mr. Peltier was extradited, he was tried separately. And I'm just going to read very briefly from a document that was submitted in one of the court cases, one of the many court cases that have been filed to try to get him some justice. I'm going to read to you from this so that you get a sense of, so that you can get a sense of how intense the misconduct was and how well documented it is. So it says, in its efforts to convict petitioner and his co-defendants, the record shows that the government engaged in outrageous conduct, which included the dissemination of inflammatory and false information to the prospective veneer, meaning to the prospective courthouse, fabrication of eyewitness affidavits, use of perjured affidavits to extradite petitioner, use of perjured firearms evidence at his trial, fabrication of ballistics evidence and suppression of proof thereof, fabrication of vehicle evidence and suppression of proof thereof, fabrication of evidence that petitioner killed the agents, and suppression of eyewitness accounts that others were responsible, fabrication of testimony of purported confessions by the petitioner and his co-defendants, the coercion of children into giving perjured testimony, the manipulation of the judge and jury through the creation of a climate of fear in the courtroom, and the government's plot to kill petitioner during an escape. So that gives you some sense of how incredibly assiduously the government over the last 50 years has attempted to, and has pretty successfully railroaded Mr. Peltier and kept him inside.
This is according to their own documents, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Yep. So if that's what they say, imagine what we say. But we appreciate that because, again, there are a lot of folks who aren't familiar with the case. There are folks who are not familiar with AIM. And for folks who are just checking in, AIM is the American Indian Movement, grassroots movement, which started in Minneapolis, I believe July of '68. So definitely, and AIM worked closely with other indigenous and African groups such as the Black Panther Party, SNCC, Revolutionary Action Movement, and others. So I wanted to point that out because sometimes folks get caught up in, well, that's their issues and this is my issues and all this other BS that makes no sense.
I'd like to say too that AIM is importantly characterized by being a group that really formed in prisons.
Right. Absolutely. No, and I definitely appreciate you pointing that out as well. And they're one of the main targets of COINTELPRO. And this, for folks who are familiar with Ward Churchill, make sure you check out the work that he's done. I keep forgetting his partner's name on that was it Vanderbilt? I can't think of his last name. But make sure you check out Ward Churchill's work on the American Indian Movement, Black Panther Party, etc. So he's captured, he's charged. We are almost 50 years later. What was that road like before we talk about going to just hopping on the whole parole situation? What was this journey like? What was, what took place in these 50 years? I know he didn't just sit around and all of a sudden, okay, we got it's a parole hearing. I mean, what's taking place? How's the state dealt with him? How's he responded?
Well, in this near 50 years that Leonard has been incarcerated, the state has dealt with him in a horrific manner. He has spent a total of 15 years in solitary confinement the entire time of his incarceration is marked by medical neglect, which has really come to the fore now that he is 80. Of course, pretextual kind of disciplinary actions, attempts to silence his voice in terms of access to the media, that is ongoing up to this moment. But Leonard, for his part, has still contributed in an amazing way to the culture, in his art, in his charity works, in encouraging youth, and still being involved with his people in a really good way, in a substantive way. He has never given up his commitment to the communities in which he dedicated his life to serve and protect, ironically enough, to use that language, and also fighting for his religious practice. That has been ongoing as well. And, Elder Lenny Foster was a key part of that work as well. That is Leonard's spiritual advisor. The decades have been characterized by cruelty and neglect and unfairness, fundamental unfairness.
Now, to your point, you kind of touched on his impact and his effect on, other people from his community. I know that there were folks from Indian Collective present this past weekend, and one of the things that they talked about was the inspiration that he's had on their particular community and their organization. You talked about the art and the culture, so on and so forth, which Leonard is a serious artist, which something that I didn't really know as much until recently, as far as, I knew that he was an artist, but, in 2024, everybody's an artist. But he's a serious artist. So we appreciate that. One of the things that I found that was amazing about Leonard in just meeting and the interaction was he still has this fire. You know what I mean? He's not although he's going on 80, think of your 80-year-old grandfather, your 80-year-old uncle. You got Leonard, you know what I'm saying? And he's quite the ladies' man too. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Folks, for we're looking at, you had people from around the world yesterday that were chanting and drumming and meditating and praying and really just hoping that there'll be great news coming up out of this parole hearing. As I mentioned, this was his first parole hearing, I think, since 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay. So give us a glimpse as to what led to this parole hearing and, what actually took place, the things that you can talk about and where we are at this particular stage. And I don't know if I know you all had put together a statement. Do you want to read that first or?
Yes, we will read the statement. We've put together, a summary of what occurred. First, of course, thank you, Kalonji, and congratulations on the anniversary of FTP. We did begin this year saying we will not give up the fight, quoting Brother Deruba. But we wanted to say that it's not over until it's over, and it is not over. We will use every available legal mechanism to secure Leonard's release. And we know that law and justice are not the same. And so the law alone is not sufficient to access meaningful justice. So we need to keep doing not only legal support, but social and political support for Leonard. As you all know, Leonard has his parole hearing yesterday, and we feel he was as supported as possible. We are aware that the parole process itself, like every part of the criminal penal system, is a political and legal process. And the flaws in this process have been meticulously documented by the United Nations. The appropriate inquiry for the commission is to assess the person who stands before them, not the alleged offense. Mr. Peltier's hearing lasted more than 7 hours. There was nothing unexpected about the hearing itself. The surviving loved ones of the agents killed on June 26, 1975, gave impact statements, as did representatives from the FBI and the U.S. Attorney from Fargo, North Dakota. Dr. Joel Morrissey gave thorough testimony showing the ongoing long-term medical neglect to which Leonard has been subjected. Nick Tilson of Indian Collective spoke compellingly to the plans that have been made to care for Leonard on his release, as well as how the work of Indian Collective is a continuation of the work that Leonard started with AIM, but from which he has never had the opportunity to benefit. Leonard was asked about the underlying offenses, but he also had the opportunity to speak about his grandchildren, and his personality and pride really shone through. A massive amount of material was presented, and we hope the hearing examiner has been convinced of the obvious fact that if released, Leonard is not in danger of violating the law, and that after 50 years, his release will not be seen as promoting disrespect for the law. We expect a decision within 21 days of yesterday, and although, of course, we hope it isn't necessary, we are prepared to appeal. And lastly, we want to thank everyone who contributed to this process, our families, friends, and mentors, and shout out to most students at CUNY School of Law. I also want to shout out the National Lawyers Guild and the National Conference of Black Lawyers. I sit on both boards, and both organizations and the school have been very supportive. This work is part of the long tradition of liberation work for Indigenous peoples everywhere. Free Palestine, free Turtle Island, free them all.
Okay, all right. Now we definitely appreciate that, and the shout out. So definitely shout out to the behind the scene folks. And I would just add to those who were praying and posting and tweeting and all that as well, because that impact, I'm sure it was felt. You mentioned that it was a 7-hour process. Is that the norm when it comes to parole hearings? Or
I think it was probably on the longer side. I think that this was maybe the most thorough, comprehensive parole hearing that they maybe have had. We submitted, just our legal team submitted something like 550 pages of letters, tribal resolutions in support of Leonard, statements, information, our parole memorandum. We were also able to get a bunch of Leonard's art, a bunch of Leonard's original art before the parole board or before the hearing examiner. And I know that in addition to that, the efforts of so many of you, so many people out there writing letters and calling the parole commission in DC. I think they've had hundreds, if not many thousands of letters that came to them. So it was thorough and comprehensive.
It was.
And I mean, I think my oral arguments were close to an hour.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So for folks getting a glimpse without, spoiler alerts and all that, what did that process look like? Was it on prison grounds? Was it in the courtroom? You know what I mean? Who presided over it? What was of course, I know the answers, but we talking to the audience right now. So you're like, but.
Well, it was on prison grounds held at USP Coleman 1, which is where Leonard is incarcerated currently. We got to the premises, and there was a high level of security. We were escorted by vehicle in the front and in the back. It was clear when we arrived, most of the top brass were present and facilitating are getting processed into the prison, but other facilities were used to separate our witnesses and the government's witnesses and victims and of that nature. We were in the back. It was held in a conference room in the visitation area. And so it was not like a courtroom setting. It was more like an administrative hearing. And that's exactly what it was. So, of course, the victim started out before that, the hearing examiner, and we won't name his name at all. And he began and explained the process. And, of course, Leonard was already present. And Mo, I don't know if you want to contribute to how the rest went, or...
Yes, there was, just to be clear, that level of security is highly unusual. We had been at the prison essentially every day for the preceding 2 weeks, and they certainly had not felt that Leonard was such a danger for the preceding 2 weeks that we needed to be escorted by all those vehicles. The surviving loved ones of the agents killed made statements. They read brief statements. There was a statement by the representative from the FBI and the U.S. attorney from Fargo, as we noted. And those did not contain anything surprising. There is a narrative, in fact, there are several narratives that have been the favored narratives of the government over the last 50 years. Their story has not remained particularly stable over the last 50 years. And so it was sort of interesting. There were a couple of different versions of that story that got told. I think it was very painful to sit and listen to these allegations. I think one of the things that one of the central conflicts, I think, is that, Leonard has always maintained his innocence. And that's very hard for the grieving families who are legitimately, shocked and devastated by these events. I think it's very difficult for them to even consider the possibility that Leonard is actually innocent.
Right.
And so I think it's very painful. They're very insistent on that narrative or different versions of that narrative. And I think it's very painful for him to be subjected to that. But, that was very much expected. And then the examiner, did an interview of Leonard, and then we get, I guess first Nick spoke and Dr. Morrissey spoke, and both of them gave testimony that lasted, it was thorough testimony, and I think it was really good. And I do think the hearing examiner was able to hear it. And, it was compelling. Both of them were very compelling, and I think gave really excellent information. I mean, to be able to put before the examiner information that essentially there is no reasonable possibility that Mr. Peltier is physically capable, let alone morally inclined to do any harm, I think was very helpful. And I think it was also really helpful for the hearing examiner to hear from Mr. Tilson of Indian Collective, to hear that, all of the work that Indian Collective does, all of these concrete solution-oriented programs are a direct outgrowth of the work that AIM began. And to hear what it would mean for Indian country for Leonard to come home. So, and then we did, the hearing examiner would only allow for one of the attorneys to speak. And so I was able to work with our team to produce, I think, some very compelling and very thorough oral argument. And, I was able to speak to them about what their obligation as an independent agency is, right? Which, is not to resentence Leonard. It is not to be retributive. It is to assess and evaluate who he is now, the likelihood that he will remain at liberty without violating the law, and to really try to present a robust picture of what their obligations are legally.
I really, and we definitely appreciate that. I'm thinking back. So Saturday, one of the things I noticed is, of course, Leonard uses a walker when they allow it. He didn't have it on Saturday when we were there. And I also noticed that, it was going in Saturday, it was like business as usual. You had the general population of visitors, and you had the legal room where we sat off in, but it was just an open space, and everyone walked in, and everything was cool. But going on the grounds yesterday, I noticed what you said as far as the whole heightened security. Like all of a sudden, you have El Chapo. You know what I mean? Like no one could be around. You got to wait for these escorts, so on and so forth. You have someone, armed at the gate now. It's a different program. Do you think that was by design just to be helpful? They felt like, you all needed a proper escort, and they was concerned about, your safety coming into the prison or whatever, or was it, and you don't have to answer it if it impedes on anything legally, or, was it by design to make Leonard look stronger than the brother that we saw on Saturday with the health issues?
Yeah. I think there could be a varied reasons for why they had such a performative security protocol when we arrived yesterday. I think perhaps the international intrigue of the case may have triggered some internal mechanisms. It may have been, as Mo pointed out, to perhaps make Leonard appear more dangerous than he is, and to perhaps influence the hearing examiner. But we don't really have an explanation as to why those protocols were in place. And so, we won't necessarily speculate as to why, but it was certainly a shock when we arrived, because it was so disparate in terms of the last 2.5 weeks that we have spent with Leonard in our processing at the prison.
So 21 days from yesterday, we're looking at 20 days before an official announcement is made. Who will make that announcement, and what and what should the people do? I know that we're getting in the chat, thank you, Paulette, for reminding folks, don't call the parole board. We don't need that kind of pressure right now. What do you all say as the attorneys? What, do we sit, wait, pray, stand on our head, light some sage? What we need to do?
Yeah, I would say to continue to lift Leonard up in your thoughts, your prayers, your reflections, that if you have a word of solidarity for him, to please send it. And of course, look at how to send communications to Leonard at USP Coleman 1 and the rules that they have. Stay abreast, follow his committee, the ad hoc committee, on social media for updates. The determination will be delivered by the United States Parole Commission. And once we have that determination, after consulting with Leonard and his decision about, whether to share it and how to share it, as soon as we get his direction, we will move on that. But in the interim, to do the work of continuing to uplift the things that he fought for, and of course his case, and do all that you can to support him.
Yeah, and I would say, of course, we hope that it isn't necessary, but we are certainly prepared to, file an appeal. We are certainly prepared, as Jenipher said, to avail ourselves of every mechanism the law has to offer. In the meantime, we're just going to have to we're just going to have to wait. Yeah.
Any words from Leonard since the hearing for the people, or?
Leonard has consistently expressed his gratitude to all of you for your support. I know that he wants folks standing by and paying attention and focused and aware of these next steps, including the outcome. And he needs that support. He needs that advocacy. So, again, getting in touch with his committee, getting in touch with other key organizations that do really in a substantive way support him is going to be really important throughout the summer, really up until his birthday. So there'll be a lot going on, and his birthday is September 12th, and he will be 80 years old. So there will be a lot out there and a lot going on, we expect.
No doubt. Before we go, I want to mention that there is a upcoming art show with some of Leonard's art that will be taking place on the 26th. Can you give us a little bit of information about where that is and what's going on?
Absolutely. That will be held at Soma Arts in San Francisco, California. And it will showcase Leonard's original artwork. And it has been curated by Farida Maslan, a well-known curator in the area, and as well as artist. We will have drummers. We will have a round table discussion with the Black Panther Party Alumni Network. We will have a commemorative vigil as well. And so we will spend basically half of the day lifting Leonard up on that infamous June 26th day, and really look forward to folks coming out to support Leonard and everything that he has stand for through the years and continues to stand for.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the work that you all have been putting in. Honored to witness that work with you all and the rest of the legal team and organizers. And, it's, we're going to keep on fighting. Please keep Black Power Media abreast so that we can get this information out and keep Leonard, for the viewers, definitely keep Leonard at the forefront of your mind, of your thinking. Again, we're talking about brother that's, man, for all practical purposes, has served more time than many of you viewing this program right now. You know what I mean?
Kalonji, could I also say today is June 11th, and it's an International Day of Solidarity with Anarchist Political Prisoners. So there is unfortunately no shortage of work to be done. If you're already sitting down to write a letter to Leonard, consider writing a letter to Green Scare prisoner Marius Mason as well. I just want to lift that up today.
And give us for folks who aren't familiar, give us some background on this particular commemoration.
June 11th is a day of solidarity with anarchist political prisoners. Right now, I think the primary anarchist political prisoner who is still serving time, at least in the feds, is Marius Mason, because Eric King, thanks in part to Jenipher's work, has been released and is no longer a prisoner. So thank you for that. And Marius Mason is an anarchist political prisoner who was sentenced to unbelievably long sentence after engaging in some conduct to destroy some research that was being funded by Monsanto. And the sentence that he was issued would have been like 7 years had his conduct not been deemed to be politically motivated. But because it was politically motivated, he was given a terrorism enhancement that more than doubled, in fact, more than tripled that sentence.
Yeah. We're looking forward to you all coming back on and to getting folks to support Marius Mason and other PPs around the world. Again, thank you all for what you have been doing for Leonard and other political prisoners and other folks who cases may not be considered, or they might not be considered political prisoners, but their cases are certainly political. So we want to make sure that we keep that in mind to a great extent. Many of us that exist on this stolen land are here held captive and were captured as quote unquote prisoners of war. And that's just what it is. And, you know, even, and we want to remind folks as well, when we talk about the case of Leonard Peltier, it's not just he's in prison, it is an act of genocide. And some folks may be like, well, how do you say genocide? Because they are killing him slowly. You know, as Attorney Jenipher Jones and others, Paulette and Dan and Dawn, from the last time you were on, talked about, you know, his ailments, some of the serious conditions that he's been, you know, experiencing over these past 50 years. So, you know, we're fighting again. Keep him in your prayers, in your chants, and you know, the call is free them all.
Free them all.
We,
Free them all.
You all be safe, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks.
No doubt. This is Black Power Media, RSTV. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you support the work that you know, the committee, Leonard's committee, his attorneys, and others. You know, one of the things that I got to witness this past weekend, I have a new respect for attorneys because, you know, I used to say that a lot of attorneys are pieces of shit, and I stand by that. You know what I'm saying? But these particular ones I can co-sign. You know, they're humble. You know, they're not chasing the cameras. They're not, you know, looking to, you know, hop on the first media wagon that comes down the street. You know what I mean? They're legit focused on their client, who is, you know, from what I witnessed, like a member of their family. You know what I mean? So definitely continue to support their work, their efforts, and raise the name of Leonard Peltier, raise the name of Mumia Abu-Jamal, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown, and so many others that are locked up behind enemy lines. Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow. We will have Daruba, Jamu, and possibly another guest that will take place tomorrow at 6 p.m. EST. If you subscribe, it's not going to cost you nothing. If you subscribe, hit that subscription button, hit the bell, you'll know when we're doing what we do. Some of y'all are like, well, I didn't know this was happening. Go with the late pass. You got to get on point, man. You know what I'm saying? This is where it's at. This is not for entertainment purposes only. Please don't confuse us with anybody else. This is what we do around here. We building. It's about revolution. Y'all stay safe, stay on point. Again, continue to support our work, our efforts. Shout out to the FTP movement. I see my brother Balagoon in the chat. It's 20 years. I don't know how the hell we did it because I get tired of some of these folks in 20 minutes. But we made it 20 years, and we're going to keep on fighting a good fight. Y'all stay tuned. Stay on point. Until next time, free them all.
Ancestor, ancestor, take my hand, ancestor, lead me on, ancestor, let me stand, ancestor, I get tired, ancestor, I get weak, God knows I get warm, ancestor, through the storm, ancestor, through the night, ancestor, lead me on, ancestor, through the light, ancestor, take my hand, ancestor.